Hello, and thanks for joining this episode of Breaking Down the Networking Chains. Today we're going to talk about network security groups, or NSGs, within the Azure environment. My name is Dwayne Natwick. I'm an author and a trainer with multiple Azure certifications. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer and a regional lead. Feel free to follow me on the social media links provided on this slide. As I spoke in our previous video on virtual networks, we're going through the topics of and services within the Azure environment that make up the networking components within Azure to get you more comfortable and familiar with how networks go together and the building blocks and pieces that make that chain that build your security infrastructure that you are utilizing for all of your platform services and infrastructure services within the Azure environment. This video is going to focus on network security groups. We spoke a lot about building a security posture in the last video, and we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it today. I just wanted to, for review, remember what we're talking mostly about within these videos is the perimeter and network security components that the network services provide. And one of the key things around that is our network security groups within Azure. So what is a network security group? The network security group is actually created with every network interface. You can create them on your own and associate them with interfaces and with subnets as well. But when you create a virtual machine, there is actually an NSG that's automatically created as part of that network card. And what it is it provides free rule-based access controls within your environment for the VNet and for the network cards and for your resources. It has a set of inbound and outbound rules that then you can use to govern your environment and how network traffic is going to work within your environment. And these rules are default rules, which we'll talk about in a second when we get into the portal, but there's also an ability for you to create custom rules to create for traffic from various IP address ranges or ports so that you can protect your environment very similarly to how you would create firewall rules within a next generation firewall. The one thing that network security groups do not do is they don't do any packet inspection. This is strictly implicit based on IP addressing and ports and protocols. So it's really working at the transport level and not doing any deep packet inspection, but it is a excellent way to create some free traffic access control within your environment when you're building your virtual networks and you're starting to build your network architecture. So let's get into the portal and take a deeper look at network security groups. So we're in our portal now, and you can see I've already created a network security group, but let's just create one on our own here real quick. I've already got network security groups in my quick steps, and I can add a network security group very easily in here. I'm going to put it in a group here that I have. I'm going to put this one in West US 2, and I'll show you why I'm doing that in a moment. And all you have to do then, unless you're using tags for coordinating your resources within the Azure environment, we're going to skip that for now. But all you have to do is put a resource group name in there, or create a resource group, give your NSG a name and a location, and you're good to go. And as you can see, it does not take long to create your NSG, and we're up and running. Now, one thing we can see here is because I don't have any resources right now within our environment, I don't have any virtual machines or virtual machine scale sets or any other resources to associate with, I cannot associate this to a network card or a network interface right now. But if I go back in here, I do have the ability to associate it to a subnet. So if I go in here and look at my subnets, I know that I have a West US 2 subnet, and it can show me here, here's my VNet 2. If you recall, I created this in the previous video and left it available so we can associate this subnet, my data subnet, and click OK. And now I have associated it to a network within my environment. Now, if we come back here and look at our NSG, we can see that there is a set of rules that are already created by default. We have our inbound rules that start at 6,500 and outbound rules that start at 6,500. Reason for this is we're going to set, as we set new rules up, we are going to set priority levels that are lower than 65,000. So that then starts to open things up. As we look through the inbound rules, we have at the highest level of priority is deny all. Same thing with outbound rules, deny all. So if we were to delete 65,000 and 65,001 on both of these, we would not have any traffic allowed. By default for inbound rules, they allow load balancer inbound rules and VNet inbound rules, VNet to VNet. And this is why we were able, when we created our virtual network, to peer those virtual networks, because that any rule is there in the background. It's always available. Same thing with outbound VNet to VNet. So traffic within our VNet ecosystem and our VNet infrastructure is always allowed by priority, unless we created a higher priority rule that blocks any of that traffic from a particular VNet. And same thing with load balancers. If we were to create a load balancer on our network, and we'll talk about load balancers in a different video, we already have inbound traffic to a load balancer from any destination allowed, which means, you know, load balancers are generally are a lot of times public facing for directing our web traffic to different virtual machine scale sets. And we would want to make sure that that is allowed, and we don't have to go back into our network security group and create that rule. It is already allowed within there. Then we have also internet outbound allowed. So any of our resources that are created and associated with this, with a network security group, is going to allow by default outbound traffic to the internet, but the overall inbound internet is not going to be allowed until we explicitly allow that within a custom rule, unless it's to a load balancer. So how do we create those custom rules? And let's look at that real quick. It's very simple. We can click add, and here we can make it with any source or a specific application security group. And we'll talk about application security groups a little bit when we talk about different application networking components in a different video as well. But the application security group is very similar to an NSG, but it's at the application layer more so than at the transport layer. We can say a specific IP address. So if we wanted to limit traffic, say if I'm creating a remote desktop rule, and creating a rule for port 3389 to allow my managed service provider to have access to my network, to my resources within Azure, I can create a RDP rule that uses the IP addressing range, the public IP addressing range of that organization, and protect myself from that standpoint. Still, you know, remote desktop opening that 3389 port's not recommended, but it is still an option for you to do, and it creates an easier management layer for the organization. And you may do that for the organization to the Bastion host subnet specifically, or a jump box that you've created for them to access your network and to manage your network. We're going to just leave this as any for right now, just for our own sake here. And here we can, we have port 80, so we can allow HTTP traffic. We could change it to 443 for HTTPS only traffic. I'll just make it easy and just make it 3389. Make it my UDP port, and allow that action to happen. I'm going to set a low priority. We'll make it 1000. And we'll change the name here. And we'll say VM management as a description. And so we added this, and one thing you can notice here is it gives me this little triangle here, and that's telling me that I've probably done something that's not recommended when I created my rule. I've created a security threat within my environment by allowing this traffic. And we can continue to create these rules. As I said, we can create a rule for port 443 for HTTPS, and make this I'm going to put this as a lower priority than my RDP rule. And add that. And so our rules can continue then to be created, and we're creating now our layers of rules for protecting our environment and for creating access control within our environment. We can do the same thing for outbound rules. If we want to block certain outbound traffic to certain IP addresses, we can do that, where we don't want people within our organization to from our resources to get to certain IP addresses that we know are threats, or to only allow internet traffic again through HTTPS rather than HTTP. We can do that within these rules and build those rules accordingly. So that ends this quick video on network security groups and what to do to set up access security rules within your environment on a quick and easy and free level to build your network architecture and build your secure environment for your defense in depth strategy. I want to thank you very much for viewing this video today, and feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on the social media links on the slide, and have a great day.